Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, the mobile university for entrepreneurs. This is your cheat code for leveling up inside and outside of the classroom. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, I am your host, Dr. Will, and today's guest is Allie Wilson. And we're going to be talking about how do you build your offer, when you decide, hey, I'm going to get in the game, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. What does that look like? How do you decide or figure out what you need to make, sell, or teach? Because one of the things that if you've been doing this work, we have many hats to what we do with our job. And so, sort of zeroing in on what is going to be that thing you're going to do and how you are going to package that, that is what we're going to be talking about today. So, Allie, this podcast is everywhere. All right. And for those who will be listening, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I would love to. And I'm so grateful for you to have me on this podcast. As we talked about kind of before the show, I'm excited just to share a little bit more about the business side of why I went into this. So, my name is Allie Wilson. I am an educator. I've taught for 6 years now. I started teaching through Teach for America, actually. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was managing a spa in Virginia. It was right during COVID, and I just felt like I wanted to give back in some way, and I knew that there was a need. There was a lack of teachers, and so I wanted to just give back. So I signed up for Teach for America. It brought me to Texas, and I've been teaching ever since. That was 6 years ago. And some days I'm like, oh, I could have been sitting in a spa, but I decided to go to a classroom. So sometimes I'm kicking myself, sometimes I'm excited about the change that I made. And then from the education space, I actually started my own company, IEP Assure. So IEP Assure was designed after the troubles and the difficulties I was having in the classroom. And I wanted to create a tool that would support the teachers around me. A lot of us, we were all working on one Excel sheet that I created, and I thought, okay, this isn't working. It's got to be better than just an Excel sheet that people are messing up when they plug in the wrong stuff. And we've created an app that's now supporting plenty of teachers across Texas and branching into other states. And it's been very exciting. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. So you mentioned about how you were working on this spreadsheet and was like, there has to be a better way. Uh, who did you have in mind as your core users?
I was my own user. I was designing something for myself that I drastically and dramatically needed to work and do my day-to-day activities. I really felt like it was either do or die at that moment. Like I either need to find a tool that's going to support me or I need to make it myself. One thing about me, and some people think I get too crazy. It may be the ADD in me, but as soon as I see a problem, I kind of just go down a tangent until I found a solution. And so that's kind of what this started out as is I found a problem, there wasn't a solution that I needed. And so I went online and I started doing the research of well, what are the steps that I need to do to solve this or create this? And so in the beginning, it truly was something that I needed. And then as I talked to more people about it, the teachers in my school, and then branching out to the teachers in the district, and then branching out from there to neighboring districts and charters and things like that. I found that it was an issue that many people were having, but we've even branched out to teachers not just being the end user, but now admin can be the end user as well. The admin are needing to see that compliance piece that wasn't there before in SPED documentation, and the teachers were needing a reduced burden. And so this tool kind of does both of those pieces.
So let's kind of take a step back. And you just
Mhm.
mentioned the SPED documentation, compliance, etc. What is the problem that your company solves?
Yeah, great question. So it's maybe like a trifold. I was going to say twofold, but there's a lot of pieces to it. So in the SPED realm, there's so many required documents that you have to do. And I think that in the beginning, when these requirements were created, it really was with the with the end student in mind. Like, how can we create documents that are tracking student growth? I think that's what it started out as. And I would like to believe that's what it started out as. But as it started going, it turned into just a list of things that I have to do on top of everything else I'm doing. And so you've lost that excitement around tracking student growth. And then became a document that takes you away from focusing on student growth. It became a document that is an added step and takes you outside of the classroom. And I've noticed that there was a lot of AI and EdTech tools that were replacing the teaching. And I didn't want to replace the teaching. That's the one thing I liked about my job. I did want to replace the documents though. And so what IEP Assure actually does is we take those documents that you're already doing. There's no added steps, but now we're taking it, we're putting it into a streamlined format so that when you go in to do your service minutes, it automatically records those minutes for the student profile so that when you go to run your progress reports, it's running the progress reports for you. Traditionally, those progress reports on the IEP goals were taking teachers hours and hours per student. Now the service trackers and the progress reports are kind of doing themselves. And then from a district perspective, teachers and admin were going in and overseeing teachers, overseeing how the teachers are doing things. And it was built a lot around the heroics of an individual teacher. Like if one teacher on a campus did a job very well, then that campus remained above water. But as soon as that teacher left or retired or went to a different campus, then the whole sped department fell apart. And so IEP Assure makes sure things are streamlined at the federal level so that you can track compliance down to the specific teacher on a campus. And then the district professionals are able to see, like, okay, where do we need additional resources? What a lot of our districts have seen is like they're able to dive down to the campus, down to the specific teacher, and then say, it looks like Miss Wilson in her seventh grade resource class is not meeting her service minutes and she's needing added supports there. Let me go ahead and add those. So instead of a gotcha and hey, we've just been audited, this is where we're losing money, we've now been sued, it's a proactive approach to helping teachers and helping students then in return.
So there's this thing, if you've ever seen this movie, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. We know in business that is not true. How did you land your first customers or your pilot district?
Yes, great question. So I was very close with a former principal of mine who then became a founder of a charter school. And so in the beginning, I would run a lot of my admin pieces by him because I was not an administrator. Like we talked about before the podcast, that was never my intention. I didn't see the thrill in becoming an administrator. And so I was focusing more on the teacher portion. When I met with him, he was telling me, like, hey, this actually could be very impactful at an admin level if you do XYZ. So, like I said, he started his own charter school. And so he was attending a charter conference. The name of it escapes me now, but it was a charter conference down in Austin. And I went to that conference, me and my CTO, and it was just us. We didn't have a booth, we didn't have anything. We just went and we started talking to people. And as we started talking to people and listening to the conflicts they were having around SPED, we were letting them know, like, hey, we've created a tool and we'd love for you to try it for free. And one thing about teachers is we love free stuff. And so that was how we landed our first pilot. So if we're talking about it from a business perspective of like, what do I do if I'm in this space? I would recommend going to those conferences and just talking to people. The more you talk to people, even if it's outside of your comfort zone and super stressful, that's how you're going to see someone who you're not selling to. They just need what you have. And that was the big thing for me because as a teacher, I'm not a salesperson. And I hate when it comes down to like, okay, well, how much is it? I hate whenever people are like, maybe. And I have to like try to be like, no, you need this. I do not do that. And I hate selling. And so I just feel that the more I talk to people about it, they already have the need. It's not like I'm creating a need for them or informing them of a struggle they weren't aware of before. They have a struggle and they just don't have a solution to it. So that's been really beneficial for the app I created is that because it is such a struggle and such a pain point for people and they get frustrated around it, the more you talk to them about like, hey, I have a solution for you. Then they get excited. So I kind of rambled, but that is how I landed my first pilot was going down to that charter conference and just listening to people complain.
All of us have been in schools or school districts where someone from the outside is coming in to deliver PD. And we've also gone to conferences and we've seen keynotes and we've gone to different workshops. So we're very familiar with an idea of someone being a consultant, but you actually built a platform. How did you get that done?
I am not very tech savvy, and it's very funny because now that the people on my campus know that I've built an app, they they come to me like, "Hey, can you help me with my HDMI cord?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, not the same thing." And so, yeah, so how did I do it? Well, I knew the gaps I had. I knew that I am an educator and that I know this business and that I know how to help students and how to help teachers. I know that, but I don't know how to code a database and how to make it so that it's not going to release student data. I don't know that. So I reached out to my network and the people I knew. And one of my best friends from high school, actually, she connected me with our CTO of IEP Assure, and he's been doing AI compliance since before it was really known as AI, but just machine learning. And once I told him the idea, he was ecstatic about it, helped pump me up as well. And we've kind of been diving into this together. So, all tech related things he solves. Anything teacher related, as far as like what the product needs to have, I know that, but I do not know tech. So, yeah, I put it over into his wheelhouse and let him handle that.
What does the sales process look like when you're trying to sell to school systems?
Yes, it's been a lot more dramatic than I thought it was going to be. As far as like the stages, I thought that it's clear. Here's an issue. Here's a solution. Let's move forward, right? But it's not like that. It's here's a problem. Here's a solution. Okay, let's talk to the teachers. Will the teachers use it? Yes, they will. Okay, let's talk to their administrators. Will the administrators help support those teachers? Okay, yes. All right, so now let's go to district. The district says that it's okay. We can use it. All right, actually, now at the district level, now you talk to the chief technical officer for the district? Can you talk to the superintendent? Can you have now a seventh meeting where you discuss this plus have our finance department on the call? So it's all those things where I thought it would just be, hey, your campus needs this. Here it is, and it's been a lot more than that. So yeah, that's what our dealing with school systems. But it has been nice because all systems kind of work the same. So once we got through the first school district and we saw that, now it's been kind of easy. I wouldn't say easy as far as like fast. It's still been kind of slow, but it is easy as far as like, okay, I know that we're going to have about six more meetings now. So we can just go ahead and get familiar with each other now.
Wow, I hear you. It reminds me of when I speak to vendors and they go, "Well, what is your timeline? When's it going to happen?" I say, I don't know. I don't write checks. I don't make decisions. All I do is I'm having this meeting. We're going to go over how this works. And from there, someone else will make that decision. And once it is signed off at the district level, then hey, I'm looped back in and we begin the onboarding process, getting the accounts created, and then I'm out at schools working with teachers and students how to use it. So it was to hear you talk about those different levels. I know they exist. I don't have personal experience with it because when people are like, "Hey, Will, you have any news? You have any news?" I'm like, "I don't have any news. I don't write
No.
checks. I don't make decisions. I'll let you know."
Sometimes that's a good place for you to be though, to be able to be like, "Hey, don't ask me. I'm not making the final call." Because from being on the other side of it, being on like the salesperson side, and you're like, "Will, come through for me. I need you to, I need this connection. I need it to go through." It's nice for you to be able to be like, "No, like I'm not the person you're looking for in this moment." Like maybe that first call, great, but go ahead and focus your efforts somewhere else. Because I know that I don't really like on the reverse end being like sold to, and that's where it's been kind of hard for me as like, okay, now I have to go out and like sell this app. And yeah, that was a harsh transition for me.
We all know about Google, Apple, Microsoft, Edgenuity, Edpuzzle, all of these different edtech sites and platforms that are in the schools today. What has been your biggest challenge breaking into the edtech space?
I would say that the ed tech space from a business lens is a lot different than I thought it would be because when you have a product and like for example, I have a lot of family members who have businesses that are very successful. When you have a product and you're like, "Okay, I'm going to make X item and it's going to cost me this much to make it, and now I'm going to have to sell it to this many people to break even." On the edtech space, we're dealing with virtual data, right? And so it might cost one district X amount, but the next district is going to cost them a little bit different. And then how much a teacher uses it will then change the cost of things. And so breaking in from a business perspective, if there's another person out there that's like wanting to break into ed tech, one thing I would keep in mind is that costs are very variable when you're working with ed tech. And so when you're creating your pricing strategy, that has to be accounted for. With IEP Assure, we've kind of mitigated that risk by doing like a pilot to adoption with every campus that we work with. We say, hey, you're essentially going to get this for free for a month. We're going to see how your campus is using it and what it costs to run your campus. And then from there, we're going to give you the most bare bones cost possible so that you are happy and we're happy as well. And so that's kind of how we've mitigated that challenge, but it definitely is a challenge that like something like Google doesn't really have to worry about cost because they're a big company, right? They can sell something super cheap up front because they know that in the end they can bump up their prices. Whereas a small company like IEP Assure, we aren't going to be able to, or we're not going to want to just bump up those prices later on. We want to give you a price that you can trust and you can stick with. So that's where it's a little bit different working with a small company versus a large company like Google.
What systems and processes did you put in up front that have allowed you to grow your company faster?
We worked a lot with knowing who our audience was. And so when we talk about growing faster, there's a few different realms. Like if I'm talking about, I'll talk about sales for a second, and then I'm going to talk about like as a company, what we've done. So growing faster in sales, we knew our target audience because I was living that pain and I created something that I would truly use. That made it easier as we were scaling and building a longer roadmap and adding in different features to our app. I was able to, before we even had a pilot campus, I was able to say like, hey, this is what we would need to do. Whereas like had it not been a realm that I was so familiar with, maybe we would have struggled a little bit more and not been able to grow as fast because we would have been off the mark. But because we knew our end user, we knew what we needed to create, if that makes sense. Now, from a business side, scaling our business, we started with just me and my CTO, and now we have a full development team, we have salespeople and all those pieces. And while we still are a small company, we've been able to onboard new people into our company because we've worked directly with people knowing our mission. And so with each person, it's not just, hey, what's your background, but hey, can we get along? Can we work together in a team where if we're on a 2 hour long call, I'm going to want to hear your voice. That's kind of how we've grown as like a company, is making sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people that are going to pump us up and hype us up in those stressful moments of a small company. But then they're also going to be inventive and they're going to create their own flows that we can impact the whole company and add to the company. But it all goes around like having basic systems in place, like who's in charge of what, who's going to be responsible at the end of the day for marketing, for example. Who makes those final calls. So on a business sense, that's how we kind of grew faster, is knowing who is the end responsible for each target thing and then really leaning into their expertise and trusting the people that you work with.
Steve Jobs, one of the greatest co-founders ever, he was not a tech person. That was Woz. Woz was his sidekick, his co-founder, who helped create the code and everything that was necessary to make Apple become Apple. Steve was the product guy. I have these ideas of what I want this to look like, feel like, work like. You coming from your background, you mentioned this earlier. Hey, I have that experience of being a special education teacher. I know what it's like day in and day out, and these are my pain points. And I know other teachers are feeling this. And you mentioned how you were connected with someone who became your CTO, who knew the tech piece. What has that been like in working with someone who, on their end, they have that expertise, but they don't have yours, and you have to walk them through of, it needs to look like this, it needs to work like that, it needs to feel like this, and then he may say, hey, I see it going this way. But from your perspective, you're saying, teachers are not going to like it like that, or the school admin is not going to like it like that. We really need to make it look like this.
That's a great question because we've actually just come off of adding new features to our roadmap where he was saying, he was like, from the back end, we need to do it this way. We need to have the platform set up in this way where teachers are tagging certain things. And I was like, no one is doing that. No teacher is going to take time out of their day to tag additional pieces. We need the system to do that for us. And so pushing back on like logically, it does make more sense, right? It does make more sense to have the teacher tag extra pieces and all that stuff. But from a user perspective, if this app is claiming that it's saving me time, I cannot have an app that I'm putting out there that is requiring teachers to put in unnecessary steps, right? And so, yeah, that is a great question. We've worked together really well because he's very analytical where I'm more visionary. And so I have these great ideas like, okay, we're going to have an app that has XYZ features and we're going to do it in 6 months. And he's like, no, we're not. We're not doing that in 6 months. And in fact, we're not getting all those features done. We're having this feature and this feature. Pick two that you want, right? And so he's been very like, okay, you need to do it this way. And when it does come down to like the final decision of like what is important, that's where it really helps to have the background as an educator because I can say like if what you're wanting to do and like I said before, of when we're adding people to our team, we're going back to the mission of like we are doing this to help education. We know that there is a teacher shortage. We want to be the app that combats teacher shortages. We know that there is a gap in teacher training. We want to be the app that replaces the need for additional training for teachers because we're doing it for you. We want to be the app that is saving you time so you can get back to your students, right? So having people that understand that that is the mission, if I say, hey, no, we're not doing it that way, it might be more difficult for the company, but we need to make it this way for the user to have the benefit. They understand that. And so they're like, okay, I know that it's going to maybe be difficult in the beginning for us, but that's what we want. We want to make it easier for them. And so let's go ahead and do it the way that you're describing it instead. But it is funny that you mentioned that because we literally just like last month had this whole discussion. It was like 3 days worth of them showing me something and I said no. And then they would show me something else and I'm like, no, I still wouldn't use it. And then they'd show me something else and I'm like, okay, now I'd use it. So yeah.
What has it been like for you in learning business operations, business development, HR, other things when you have looked to grow your company? Because you've also mentioned how we've brought in additional employees to have these roles. When again, you're not this consultant who's coming in, delivering these sessions, delivering these workshops. You have this entire platform that quite honestly allows your company to be a business where you're not owning another job. So
Mhm.
when you had to grow, when you had to bring on other people so that you could actually grow and expand, what was that process like in understanding what roles needed to be created and how do we pick the right person for that role?
Right. So in a startup stage like us, we have dealt a lot with contractors rather than like having them fully onboarded as employees. Now we do have contractors that are working essentially full time, but they're still contractors. And so when we've decided like who do we need, we've decided it based on okay, I know I cannot do this. Like I know that I don't know how to code a computer. So we went and found, my CTO. My CTO said, "Hey, I don't have time to code this all myself." So we went and found a development team. Then I said, "Hey, I am not salesy. If someone says like, "Hey, I'm not interested," I'm like, "Sounds great. Remember me." Right? I'm not going to push into that field. And so we then needed to go out and find someone who's going to assist with the sales. Or the marketing, for example, I knew that I could do the marketing, but do I have time to do everything that goes into a marketing piece? Not necessarily. And so we hired in that realm. So really, it's doing inventory of your own skill set and saying, hey, what am I good at? What do I want to do? And then deciding from there, okay, I might be good at marketing or sales, for example. I'm pretty good at sales, but I really don't like doing it. And so that's where we decided where to go next.
What was your biggest I didn't see this coming moment as a founder?
Yeah. Okay. My biggest I didn't see this coming moment was how excited I was when we got our first users on and they gave us positive feedback. So you think that you'd be like, oh, obviously I'm going to be excited about that. I was beyond excited. It's like, okay, I have 2 children, and I would say that this is very similar to having my children. Like, when you create something that you know is really gonna have a life cycle and a lifespan of its own, and that it's gonna keep developing, you start creating a future vision for that thing, right? That was, like, the biggest moment for me. Like, I knew that this was gonna be exciting. I didn't know how excited I was gonna be when people start giving us positive feedback, or when they're like, "Man, thank you so much for creating this app." I'm like, "No worries," right? Like, it's just very exciting. So that was, like, the biggest thing that I wasn't expecting in a positive way. In a negative way, the biggest I didn't see that coming is how difficult it is to deal with the lows. Like, when you get a district so close to the finish line and then they're like, "Hey, it came down to, buying iPads for our school district or buying your app for our school district." And obviously they're going to go with needing to buy resources, right? Something like that. That was like really sad. I didn't realize on both ends how excited I would be for the wins and then how kind of sad I would be when something fell through. Now, with that district with the iPads, we've later been able to, this is where the sales piece comes in, because sometimes they don't realize like how this can be a true solution for them. And like, hey, if this is going to cost me money, where can I save money by using this app? So being able to be on your toes and being able to say, like, hey, it might seem like you're spending money, but the district actually does save money because of XYZ. Um, anyway, so long ramble, but that's both the positive and negative things that I did not see coming.
Right. So it's been great having you on, Allie. But before we go, I want to ask you, what's one business move that you made that has changed everything?
One thing, I feel like every day I'm changing something. I'm like constantly pivoting. But I think one business move I made that changed everything was constantly having meetings with my CTO where we are honest with each other of like what's going well and what's not going well. Not personality wise, because I mean, we knew that we got along well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten into this business, right? As we were like negotiating contracts and things, we talked a lot about like this is like a marriage, so we need to make sure that we like being around each other. But in the sense of like we take inventory of like how are things going and we quickly adjust. We don't sit and wait and like, hey, let's just keep going with it. We don't have time to do that really in a startup. You have to see an error and adjust immediately. And so that's one business move that's changed everything is those frequent check-ins with your business partners and saying like, hey, what's working, what's not working? Let's make a plan and let's do it.
That is fantastic. I'm glad that we connected on LinkedIn. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. I'm really glad, and you have a wonderful speaking voice. I'm sure you hear that all the time. That's obviously why you have a podcast, but it's like you could be a radio person. Like, when you're driving to work in the morning, stressed in like traffic, I would want to hear Dr. Will's podcast. So, for everyone who is maybe deciding on what to subscribe to, go ahead and subscribe to him because this sounds nice.
Well, thank you. Alhamdulillah. I appreciate it. I've told people that, I have a couple of career goals of what to do next. And one of those that is just like my big, hairy goal is to actually get paid to podcast full time. So, or
Mm.
have my own radio show. So thank you very much. If that
Oh,
happens.
I'll be the first radio listener. So, yeah, I normally listen to Apple Music or Spotify, but I'll go ahead and switch back to the radio if you're on it.
Well, thank you again. Alhamdulillah. I've even said on this podcast, if that happens, I love my school district, but I'm out.
Yeah, Imma have to go.
Yeah, I'll do that. So, thank you again, Alec, for coming on and dropping your gems. It was a great conversation and a great way for teachers to figure out, hey, how do I create this offer? And if they decide a platform, an app is something that I want to do, what could possibly happen along the way?
Mhm. Yeah, and if any of them are listening to this and wanting some specific advice, if they want to add me on LinkedIn, they can add me on LinkedIn. I'm always excited to help other people. I would not be here except for, like, a lot of help from other people, so I always try to give back and answer questions or be a support where I can.
All right. Now, people, you know how to do this. This podcast episode is going to be on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Simplecast, Stitcher, Spotify, and Audible. I need you to subscribe, share with your network, and listen. Because I'm trying to grow on the Apple Podcasts, and they do really check if people are listening. And I also need you to give me some reviews. and some stars because I'm trying to get Jay-Z on the show because I want him to know that we're doing big things around here. Again, I'd like to thank my guest, Allie Wilson, for coming on and for you for checking out another episode of the Dr. Will Show, the mobile university for entrepreneurs. As always, people, invest in you. EDU. Peace.